This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg in South Africa, the economic hub of Southern Africa, and some say sub-Saharan Africa. It's the biggest city here in South Africa, Johannesburg. A very good morning to you. My name is Eben Jansen. I'm coming to you live from our studios, well above our studios here in Auckland Park. In today's show, we'll have a keen focus on the roads here in South Africa. We've got a court case with the Right to Know campaign against etolls in the Western Cape, and here in Gauteng, well, we'll shift our focus to the problems we've been having in recent times, last week in particular, with road rage on the roads here in South Africa. We've got a couple of other stories a little bit later on, but let's go and get the top stories from Katrin Malan.
Welcome to Newsroom. I'm Katrin Malan, and let's take a look at the top stories this morning. The United States is expected to announce nearly 10 billion rand in business deals, increase funding for peacekeeping, and commit billions to expanding food and power programs in Africa during the US-Africa Summit, which begins in Washington today. The three-day summit, initiated by US President Barack Obama, will also discuss the renewal of the African Growth and Opportunity Act. In the courts today, sentencing procedures are expected to commence in the Thandi Manqubela murder trial this morning. She was found guilty late last year for murdering her husband, acting judge Patrick Manqubela, in June 2009. Manqubela and her co-accused Vela Mbene have pleaded not guilty to suffocating her husband. Murder-accused Oscar Pistorius' defense team has until the end of today to file their closing arguments at the High Court in Pretoria. The state filed its documents last Wednesday. Final arguments in Pistorius' murder trial will be heard on the 7th of August. On the 8th of July, Judge Thokozile Masipa ruled that no argument could be published in print or electronic media until the start of arguments in court. Israel will hold its fire in most of Gaza for 7 hours amid world outrage over the deadly strike of a UN school in the Palestinian territory. The unilateral truce 4 weeks into fighting comes after world powers fiercely condemned the attack that killed 10 Palestinians sheltering at a school as Israel was pulling some of its troops from Gaza. United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has described the attack as a moral outrage and a criminal act. After 11 days of sporting excellence, Glasgow signed off in style last night with a vibrant Commonwealth Games closing ceremony. The closing ceremony saw everyone from the athletes to the volunteers who played a part in the event have their moments in the limelight. England ended at the top of the medal table with 174 medals, 37 more than second place to Australia. South Africa finished in 7th place on the medal table. The president of the Games Federation hailed it as the best ever Commonwealth Games.
Before we entrust the safekeeping of the Commonwealth Games flag to the Gold Coast, on behalf of Commonwealth Games Scotland, I would like to express my thanks and appreciation to all of the Commonwealth Games associations that came here to compete in Glasgow.
Yes, a lot of excitement there last night. Remember, all these top stories are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much to you, Katrin. The Right to Know campaign is called for the dismissal of SANRAL's application for secrecy in the Western Cape High Court, over tolling. The organisation says tolling of the N1 and N2 roads has been clouded in secrecy after SANRAL applied for denial of public access to court documents and public hearings. On top of that, Right to Know campaign spokesperson Alison Tiley says they dispute that parts of the hearing should be made secret. Now she's on her way to the Cape High Court this morning, but she took some time out to talk to us here on Newsroom this morning. Very good morning to you, Alison. Thank you for joining us. Just give us a little bit of background about this matter before the Cape Town High Court today.
Well, essentially what has happened is that we've seen a dispute between the City of Cape Town and SANRAL on the question of e-tolling in the Western Cape. And the matter has proceeded with a lot of documents being put into a court file in preparation for the hearing of that issue. And SANRAL has approached the court and asked that that court file be sealed and that those documents be kept from the public in anticipation of a hearing. That hearing is going to be today to decide whether or not those documents should be made public.
Alison, what type of information and what is your expectation then from the court today?
Well, it's difficult to know what's in the file because it's sealed, but we anticipate that there is information that relates to the general structure around etolling, how much it would cost, who the various contractors would be. We know that there's already a preferred bidder. So I think in sum we would expect to find out about how the process would roll out in the Western Cape. The court is in all likelihood going to sit today and hear arguments from the different parties on why parts of the record or all of the record should be kept secret and why, obviously from our side, why it should be made public.
Alison, finally, what then about the arguments that South Africa deserves better roads and people will have to pay for it in the end?
Well, I don't think that's really the issue that we're talking about here. The question is whether people have a right to know or not. You know, how matters are dealt with in government is one issue, but what we're saying is that the people have a right to know what it is that's going to happen, and they have a right to know how much they're going to pay, and we believe a lot of that is in the court documents.
Thank you very much, Alison Tiley. Of course, they are the Right to Know campaign, that is. They are in the Cape Town High Court today, of course, over tolling of the roads in that part of the country. And there's much unhappiness in the Western Cape about that issue, as much has been the case here in Johannesburg. But let's go down to the studio where Katrin is standing by this morning.
Well, thank you, Eben. Yes, the International Relations Minister was speaking ahead of the official start of the inaugural US-Africa Leaders Summit, which begins today in Washington. On the summit issues, South Africa's chief diplomat has suggested that the United States has lagged behind in its engagement with Africa, focusing rather on individual country relationships.
An early morning Sunday arrival for President Jacob Zuma, who will lead the South African delegation to a summit where the nature of engagement remains uncertain and the outcomes as yet undefined.
This is their own initiative. They started it. And we have not looked down upon the invitation. We came, we'll air our views in a most constructive manner so that that which is a good initiative also knows that in 2014 is going to be that you work on a structured mechanism where you'll have senior officials meeting regularly, that you also prepare a draft outcome document, which when leaders arrive, they don't start work. They are engaging on that which has been worked upon.
The broad themes include tackling instability and the escalation in extremism in several regions, building strong democratic institutions that promote good governance, and investing in Africa's future, with a strong focus on trade and investment and the renewal of the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act.
President Jacob Zuma begins his official engagements here early Monday with a business breakfast briefing where he will deliver the keynote address to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Africa Business Initiative, where he will engage directly with U.S. CEOs about the trade and investment landscape in South Africa, after which he will be the keynote speaker at the National Press Club, where CEOs will be replaced by journalists during question time. Shervin Bryceby's SABC News, the White House.
Well, it's time now to take a short break here on SABC Newsroom on SABC News. After the break, we take a look at road rage in South Africa. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
Zimbabwe's government appears to be loosening its grip on the diamond trade. A new gazette is making provisions for private companies to cut, polish and even sell diamonds internationally.
Companies will have to apply for permission from the state to sell the gems.
There is now less smuggling of the diamonds themselves, but the issue we now have is transfer pricing.
But civil society groups remain concerned about the illicit trade.
Industry watchdogs say more transparency is needed in the country's diamond trade.
Your World, weekdays between 11 and 12 midnight.
Dumelang kunjani nda salamualaikum goeiemorgen namaste jumbo Africa and a very warm welcome to SABC News channel 404. South African Revenue Service has upheld its impressive record of collecting taxes. SARS collected about 86 billion rand more in the fiscal year compared to the previous year.
The message we want to communicate is that government must also live modestly. And that when we're looking at these sorts of issues, modesty is an important message to communicate to the public.
That's AM News, daily at 10 a.m. on SABC News.
Zoom into Africa. This is Nigeria. The president is Mr. Goodluck Jonathan. Nigeria attained independence in 1960. The population is more than 166 million people. One of the major languages spoken is English. Monetary unit is Nigerian Naira.
Is warning that the industrial action will weigh on the current account. Now, it reflects the degree to which South Africa is importing more than it exports.
More discriminatory investors will avoid placing money in SA bonds and equities and go elsewhere, given the fragility of the country's twin deficits.
The strike has already impacted negatively on economic growth, but it hasn't had a big impact on export data just yet.
Primetime News, daily at 6 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back. Your newsroom on SABC News. Now, is it the underbelly of a deeply angry nation that plays itself out as road rage daily on South Africa's roads? These days, unfortunately, cameras are always at the ready to capture the incidents. Last week, the country was shocked by the assault at an intersection of a 65-year-old Pretoria man who was allegedly punched in the face several times by another man. This after the man bumped his car. Earlier in the week, a similar incident occurred on Witkoppen Road here in Johannesburg when the passenger of a Porsche got out of his car and punched a man in a VW Polo. Both of these incidents were caught on camera and the footage posted on YouTube. Even though these two incidents made headlines last week, road rage is nothing new on this country's roads. Here to discuss or to take the conversation further, I'm joined by Alton Hart, an attorney at the University of Johannesburg's Law Clinic, and then Howard Dembowski, who's the chairman for the Justice Project South Africa. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Howard, let's start with you, because we've had this discussion periodically on the show. What do you make of these latest events and the opening where I talk about, is it a fact that we're getting angrier and angrier as a nation?
Well, I think there's no doubt that we are angry. Where it comes from, that we're the happiest nation in the world, I don't know. Because honestly, if you have a look at the kind of footage that we're seeing, and thank goodness for mobile phones and their cameras, because we wouldn't be seeing this. It's nothing new on our roads. But unfortunately, the sense of entitlement is growing and growing and growing. And unfortunately, these road rage incidents always end up in ugly matters like this because of someone else's sense of entitlement and somebody else's having broken some form of road law or another.
No, I want to take it to the lawyer because, you know, it seems legal recourse is the only thing we have. Some people can't defend themselves against these kind of thugs on the road. Alton, just tell us, if you're a victim, what legal protection do you have if somebody accosts you or attacks you on the road?
Even it's quite easy, because this violent behavior that is directed at a person that most probably transgressed the traffic rule, and now suddenly you want to take the law into your own hands. There is incidences where you can actually report this. If there's a physical assault on your body, you can report it to the South African police. Also, when there's damage to your property, you can also report it to the police. And the one physical assault to your body means that it will be assault charge, which can be assault common or assault GBH. To your property, you can ask for malicious damage to property. But also, if there's a racial slur that is vented towards you, there's also the Equality Court, and you can go to the court and ask for damages for your character being infringed. So there's a lot of legal recourse that a person can take when these kind of uncalled for behavior is directed at you.
You saw the two incidents that we spoke about
Yes.
a bit earlier. You saw the one where the older gentleman was attacked, and then the one where the guy jumped out of the Porsche and kicked the door and so forth. Legally, what do you make of those two incidents?
That is like uncalled for behavior that we don't need in the country, because we as South Africans, we're becoming more intolerant on the roads. It doesn't mean if a driver swerved in front of you, you now have to jump out of your car and actually damage his property, because you're contravening the law as well. So for you, if somebody is transgressing the law, you need to report it to the relevant authorities. Look for Metro Police on the side of the road and indicate what the problem is. But to jump out of the car, you're making yourself at fault of committing a crime.
Howard, let's take it back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier. The anger that seems to be growing in our society, and it plays out on the roads. Is it a fact that people feel that they can be a little bit anonymous on the roads, therefore they can do the things that they do? Or is it just a free-for-all out there at the moment?
Well, even it's a mixture of all of that. And unfortunately, we've been sending those messages now for decades. We haven't been sending them for just 1 or 2 years. Let's actually face it. People behave very badly on our roads because our law enforcement authorities let them. The fact is that we still have improper law enforcement that's taking place in this country, in some places non-existent law enforcement, and this is the net result. It's a free-for-all out there, and I don't think that there's a single driver on our roads who could actually deny that when you go on our roads, you take your life into your hands. It's all for one and one for all. It's everybody doing their own thing, and I'm more important than you, and you're going to get out of my way, etc., etc. But what I do believe that we need to do, specifically with these road rage incidents, is that our courts have a responsibility. The fact is that we have seen somebody shot dead a couple of months ago, as a result of road rage. I would like to see anybody who is charged with this so-called road rage, which we don't have an offence for, by the way, getting sent to jail, quite frankly, and sending a very clear message to everybody else, because those are penalties that are available under the law for such things as assault, even common assault.
Elton, I want to bring it back to you, and there we have the picture running again on camera, but as the legal profession, how do you see this kind of thing being addressed? It seems as if it's out of control at the moment.
Yes, definitely it's out of control, and I think, as Howard has pointed out earlier, we need better policing, but also we as citizens of the country, we need to take responsibility in reporting these things, because sometimes these incidents happen and it doesn't get reported to the police station, so the police stations in the various jurisdictions cannot take action. So we as the citizens of the country, we first need to take action and say we report these types of things, and if a motorist sees that another motorist is venting anger towards another motorist, try and make a recording so that there's visible evidence so that these perpetrators can be brought to book. And we as the country, we need to help the cops, because we cannot expect them to do all, because we have limited resources in the country and we need to help. But also, some of our police officers need to step up their game, because sometimes they see these things and they turn a blind eye to it, and that's unacceptable too.
Howard, I think the one thing that South Africans are well aware of is their public image, or the way that other people view them. Could that be a way of addressing this? Should we not have a register where we name and shame these kind of people and really put their names and their pictures out there on a sort of public register where you can see people that abuse others on the roads and that do so habitually?
Most certainly, Eben. And we would welcome that type of thing. It's very unfortunate that the one and only initiative with naming and shaming, which was an official initiative in newspapers, was that of Lead SA and the Western Cape provincial government, wherein they were naming and shaming convicted drunk drivers. And that suddenly just came to an end. And it hasn't been reinstated. The promise was, at the time, that it was going to be reinstated, but for the whole country.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen that yet. Now, if we can take something as serious as drink driving and not publish those who are convicted in the newspapers, then, you know, are we actually serious that we're going to be asking about people who are speeding and people who go through red traffic lights and people who engage in road rage?
Yeah. Elton, do you think this kind of thing, there's a place for it legally, naming and shaming, and how do you think this kind of thing would work? Is there a place for it first legally?
Legally, naming and shaming, it has been done, so obviously it hasn't been challenged in the Constitutional Court, because normally if you would put up somebody's name in a specific document or something, you're infringing on his rights as well, but our Constitution guarantees that some of your rights can be limited in terms of Section 36. So if somebody's not complaining, you name and shame them. Let them go to the Constitutional Court, because they're transgressing law. We're trying to actually make them abide the laws of the country. So there's our give and take. You can limit some of the rights, so that's one of the things that we have to consider.
We saw a couple of months ago two guys pulled guns on each other on the roads, actually Malibongwe just down the road. One guy died, the other one is now a father of two in prison for murder. What about the carrying of firearms in your vehicle? Is there, what does the law say? Are you allowed to do that, and should we not curb that kind of thing?
I think we should curb it, but the law allows people to wear a firearm on their person, but it must be in the holster, and the holster must be secured. And it must also be safely tucked away, like under your jacket, so it mustn't be just visible to kids in the general public. So that's the thing. The law allows you to carry it on your person, but I think with the current situation in South Africa and the anger that we on a daily basis see on the roads, I think there should be stricter laws as to how you carry your gun and where do you carry it. Most probably, I think that we should be looking at actually having your gun now in kind of a safe box, so that it's a little bit more difficult to actually get to the gun. But then again, other gun owners will come and say, but what if I get hijacked? Then I can't take it out of this safety glove box quick enough to defend myself. So it's this balance that you have to strike between the rights of the individual and the broader community.
That's right. Just quickly again, Elton, before we conclude, what's your message to the members of the public out there? What do you do if you are the victim of road rage, and what should your response be and the recourse that you should take?
If you are a victim of road rage, I would suggest that you immediately report this incident to your nearest police station from where the incident happened, because that would normally constitute or fall within their jurisdiction. So report it, and at the scene of the incident, try and get as many as possible witnesses. Take their names, telephone numbers, their addresses, so that when the police do the investigation, they can actually follow up with these witnesses and to see if they actually saw this incident happen, so that we can bring these perpetrators to book, because you need witnesses to make the charge stick. If it's one-on-one, I said, you said, the court might just find in favor of the accused.
And maybe if you've got a camera on your phone, you should record as much as you can, I would think.
Yeah, I would suggest that people should, I'm not saying they need to upgrade, but yeah, people should get the camera phone to help curb crime in the country.
So get a camera phone, don't get a gun, Howard. That's the message that we are leaving with here today.
Yes, there was a time when people were smart and phones weren't.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. It's a very worrying, one can laugh and one can joke about it, but it's a very worrying scenario that's increasing on our roads. It seems as if almost daily people are at risk of becoming road rage victims, and only recently we've had somebody die on the roads physically, and in the last week we've had 2 high-profile cases now that's been broadcast on all of the news platforms around the country, even where a younger man assaulted a pensioner in this case. Well, where will it end? Unfortunately, it seems as if it's no end in sight in the short term. Thank you again, gentlemen, for joining us. Alton Hart from University Johannesburg's Law Clinic, and Howard Dembowski, who's the chairman for Justice Project South Africa. Thank you. Well, time now for Newsroom to take a short break. We'll be back right after this.
I once saw a flower blossom through 27 prison bars of yesterday's unjust flames. I felt an old woman's anticipation for the country's first open elections. And I heard the loud celebrations of that flower's historic inauguration. I was there when Unity sang of how the Springbok never held anything back. And we saw a first-time band of 11 men, Shibobo possibility throughout the land. At the foot of Africa, time remembers how truth can reconcile a people. We carved our name into space, and on the world stage, our art stood united. When we blow that vuvuzela, the whole world goes into a trance. And even in that tearful hour of the flower's separation, we are a people who see the music and hear the flowers dance. SABC, sharing 20 years of inspiration.
Well, hello and welcome back. This is Newsroom on SABC News. Let's take a look at the news-making headlines this morning. The United States is expected to announce nearly 10 billion rand in business deals, increase funding for peacekeeping and commit billions to expanding food and power programs in Africa during the US-Africa Summit, which begins in Washington today. The three-day summit, initiated by US President Barack Obama, will also discuss the renewal of the African Growth and Opportunity Act. In the courts today, sentencing procedures are expected to commence in the Thandi Maqobela murder trial this morning. She was found guilty last year of murdering her husband, acting Judge Patrick Maqobela, in June 2009. Maqobela and her co-accused Vela Mbene have pleaded not guilty to suffocating her husband. Murder-accused Oscar Pistorius' defense team has until the end of today to file their closing arguments at the High Court in Pretoria. The state filed its documents last Wednesday. Final arguments in Pistorius' murder trial will be heard on the 7th of August. On the 8th of July, Judge Thokozile Masipa ruled that no heads of argument could be published in print or electronic media until the start of arguments in court. Israel will hold its fire in most of Gaza for 7 hours amid world outrage over a deadly strike on a UN school in the Palestinian territory. The unilateral truce 4 weeks into fighting comes after world powers fiercely condemned the attack that killed 10 Palestinians sheltering at a school, as Israel was pulling some of its troops from Gaza. United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has described the attack as a moral outrage and a criminal act. And then after 11 days of sporting excellence, Glasgow signed off in style last night with a vibrant Commonwealth Games closing ceremony. The closing ceremony saw everyone from the athletes to the volunteers who played a part in the event have their moments in the limelight. England ended at the top of the medal table with 174 medals, 37 more than second-placed Australia. South Africa finished in 7th place on the medal table. The president of the Games Federation hailed it as the best ever Commonwealth Games.
Before we entrust the safekeeping of the Commonwealth Games flag to the Gold Coast. On behalf of Commonwealth Games Scotland, I would like to express my thanks and appreciation to all of the Commonwealth Games associations that came here to compete in Glasgow.
I'll remember all these top stories are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Katrina. Now, as part of the National Science Week taking place from the 4th to the 9th of August, the University of Johannesburg will be hosting a variety of activities. The National Science Week that was opened at the University of the Free State on Saturday by the Minister of Science and Technology, Naledi Pandor, is an initiative by the Department of Science and Technology that is run in all 9 provinces here in South Africa. Now, joining us today is Professor Azwindini Muronga, the Associate Director of the Soweto Science Centre at University Johannesburg, to tell us a little bit more about the topic. Very good morning to you, Professor. Thank you for joining us. We're celebrating 20 years of democracy this year. How's the world of science in South Africa changed or developed over this period?
Much has been done in terms of science and technology, and one of the examples is we are prouding ourselves that the whole world have entrusted us with a project like the SKA, but more development still need to be done in terms of the basic education in math and science. But we are pleased that in terms of research and innovation, really we're doing very well.
I want to talk to you about National Science Week in a sort of wider context. What's the aim of it all? Who are we trying to attract and inspire the most?
National Science Week is really the project which is an initiative of the Department of Science and Technology. Its aim is trying to make an awareness of science and technology and South African inventions to the public, and also to make sure that the young learners take math and sciences in schools. And of course it will be taking place in various provinces and various locations across the country.
If one listens to the doomsayers, it seems as if we're lagging behind in math and science. Is that accurate?
Well, if one look at the university level, we find that really there are challenges faced by these young learners that are coming to study university in terms of math and science. But however, we think that there could be strategies and solutions to these problems.
Now, when we talk about science and scientific development, how do we then compare to, let's start with other African countries, and then when we look at it, the wider world for that matter?
In terms of the continent, we find that because of our infrastructure, the infrastructure is very, very important for any developed economy. And we find that we are at a very good standing compared to other African countries, meaning that we have got a really good background in science and technology in the country. And also compared to other countries out there, we're still a little bit lagging behind, and which means we need lots of development in science and technology.
When we talk science, we always look at development and achievement and innovation. What are some of our greatest scientific achievements of the last 20 years?
The past 20 years, since we were welcomed back in the world, I will say that in terms of the achievements, one of them is that by the whole world entrusting on us to say there is an SKA, they have seen the potential, and we should actually be proud of that. And then the challenge is upon us to say we have to excite these youngsters through the National Science Week activities to say there is something called SKA, that you are the users of that facility.
How do you get youth excited, though, about, or interested for that matter, about science? Is it only at these kinds of weeks that you can make the inroads, or should there be a wider plan?
There should definitely be a wider plan, and it must be embedded on school curriculum in terms of career guidance, of course, and in terms of role modeling. We are lacking young people who can be role models, because most of the output and the research in this country is done by people who are of the age over 50.
Yeah.
And then the youngsters, they don't see those role models. And one of that is really we must. And talking about that, we are now in August, which is a Women's Month, of which we have to profile women in sciences to come and be the role model to excite young girls to do sciences.
I understand that you're going to do a variety of different venues around the country and that you're going to use science technology, new technology to connect all these various events. One you're going to be using is going to be Skype and so forth to make all these, intertwine all these events around the country. Just tell us a little bit about this connection and communication process.
Yes, for the first time the University of Johannesburg Science Centre has realized that we have to really start to partner with the communities. We will be having communities in the northwest, in Wojanala district, Kayakulu community, where we are partnering with communities there. And in Limpopo, we have got 2 communities, Hakaku villages and Mukura villages, where the schools will be coming there, and together with the Soweto Science Centre. But in order to feel that this is a countrywide, we are going to use Skype to connect all these centers, to use the technology to advance those rural areas, to connect them with Johannesburg through the Soweto Science Centre via Skype.
Finally, Professor, I read that one of the most exciting events is going to be a lifetime virtual tour. Tell us about this and how it's going to set up this whole event.
We have the world's biggest, largest laboratory in the world, which is CERN in Europe, where some of our scientists at the University of Johannesburg has participated in the Nobel Prize winning of 2013 in the discovery of the particle known as the Higgs boson. And for the first time, the people in Soweto in South Africa will have chance to actually interview the people who are at that laboratory live from Soweto.
Well, Professor, thank you for joining us and telling us all about Science Week. I'm sure it's going to be an exciting week for everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's Professor Zandrini Murongo. He's Associate Director of the Soweto Science Centre at the University of Johannesburg, talking to us about National Science Week here in South Africa. Now, back to one of our top stories. Israel has declared a 7-hour truce in Gaza amid world outrage over a deadly strike on a UN school in the Palestinian territory. The unilateral truce came after world powers fiercely condemned the attack that left 10 Palestinians sheltering at that school dead. The Palestinian death toll from the 4-week conflict between Israel and Hamas stands at over 1,800 people now.
A second UN school is hit by Israel in less than a week. The attack killed at least 10 civilians and wounded 30 others. The United Nations says it vigorously condemns the attack by Israel.
There is no evidence whatsoever that there were militants inside the school. There's no evidence that there were militants firing rockets from inside the school. In international law, you have to distinguish between combatants and non-combatants. You have to consider the proportionality. Is the risk of civilians being killed worth it?
In Jerusalem, Israeli Defense Forces spokesman Peter Lerner says Israel is determined to figure out what happened.
Indeed, we're investigating the situation. We will get to the bottom of this, and once we do, we will make our conclusions public.
Hamas spokesman Sami Abu Suri.
Ban Ki-moon made it legitimate for the killer and the criminal by mourning the death of the Israeli soldier, the killer, and he ignored the blood of the innocent civilian people under occupation who have been killed in every minute, even while taking shelter in the schools. Ban Ki-moon is responsible.
Washington condemns the most recent shelling at the UN school, calling the attack disgraceful. Sunday's attack has increased the death toll in Gaza given by Palestinian officials to more than 1,700, most of them civilians. Israel says 64 soldiers have died in combat and that rockets fired into Israel have killed 3 civilians.
Now, do you know what trashion is all about? If you're interested, it's really, really interesting concept. Anine Dormel, our producer, has got a little insight into this new trend.
Let's
That's right, Eben. One man's trash is always considered as another man's treasure. And this is exactly what the Trashion fashion show, the first of its kind to be hosted at the Fourways Mall, was all about. Recently, students from Studio 5 Fashion Design School in Johannesburg were given an opportunity to showcase their talent after making garments from discarded material, all for charity. To tell us more, we are joined today by the organizer of the event, Zanet Magita, and by the winning designer from Studio 5, Esther Adebolajo. Welcome, and thank you for joining us, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. Zanet, if I can just start with you, how did this whole idea of trash and fashion come about?
Okay, we were approached by one of our stores in Fourways Mall to help them with their prize giving. And I had to go back and look at what other campaigns we've done previously. And Fourways Mall is 21 years, it turned 21 years in March, and we've never had a fashion show. So I needed a platform where all stores can participate and not just fashion stores. So I approached various stores to give me their old advertising material to create a platform for your restaurants and stationery stores to take part in it.
Great. And then I also see it's actually their material that you used with the garments, which is nice, you know, the whole idea of recycling. So what were you aiming to achieve with this whole event?
Initially, we wanted to raise funds for Witkoppen Health and Welfare Centre, which is one of our charity organizations that we deal with. So out of the garments, we had to sell raffle tickets to the public to come and see the show, and all proceeds that were raised went to the Witkoppen Health and Welfare Centre.
All right. And as I mentioned, this was the first show of its kind at the Fourways Mall. Are you looking at doing it again, and how are you going to make it bigger and better?
It's going to be an annual thing, and we're going to continue working with Studio 5 School of Fashion. We have 170 stores within Fourways Mall, so next year I'm looking at bringing more stores and more brands to take part in a project.
Okay, great. And then Esther, you are the winning student. These are your garments that won. Just tell us about, when did you know that you were going to be a fashion designer?
When I was still young, I used to watch TV, watch fashion shows. Then I got inspired, and I told myself that I will be a fashion designer one day.
All right. And you're actually a first-year student, so you managed to beat all the second and third years. Do you think this is something you're gonna do again next year?
Yes, I will do it in future. I will do it in future.
And how difficult was it working with these type of materials?
Honestly, it was difficult. But I tried, and I improved bit by bit.
What was the whole process like? Where do you start?
Yeah, I started from school.
All right. Let's just take over there. And can you tell us, are these the only two garments that you made?
Yes, there's only two things that I made.
All right, wonderful. Zanet, if we can come back to you.
Sure.
So how much did you manage to collect for your charity?
We raised just over 10,000, and like I mentioned, it's all going to go to the Witkoppen Health and Welfare Centre.
Wonderful work. We really hope that next year it will definitely be bigger and better. Eben, back to you.
SABC News, we've got Africa covered.
Welcome back. You're still at Newsroom here on SABC News. Before we close, let's just take a quick look at some of the stories in the news right now. Of course, Chief Rabbi Warren Goldstein says the South African Jewish community will not be intimidated into silence. He was addressing thousands of people at a solidarity rally for Israel here in Johannesburg. A few meters away, fellow Jews protested against their presence and staged a pro-Palestine gathering.
Thousands converged here in solidarity with Israel. Civil society, non-governmental organizations and religious groups came to support the Israeli cause. Religious organizations included members of the Shembe Church, led by Prophet Phakama Shembe. Security detail enormous.
I think what it shows is that South Africans of every faith, of every race, of every background support Israel, a fellow democracy that's looking for peace.
There are millions of South Africans on the length and breadth of this country who have a different view about Israel and Gaza from what you see in the mainstream media and certainly in social media and Facebook and Twitter. When we as a country debate the Middle East conflict, we can do so with respect, with dignity, realizing that there are millions of South Africans on both sides of this debate, and you can't vilify opponents.
A stone's throw away, fellow Jews made their voices heard, lending support to the Palestinian cause.
We're proudly Jewish, and we're growing in number, where we stand against Israel going and killing civilians in Gaza. Israel cannot build its happiness on other people's persecution.
In the same area, Muslims demanding the end to the bloodshed.
In a free and democratic South Africa, we cannot allow Zionists to celebrate the deaths of thousands of innocent people in Gaza.
Political parties didn't shy away from showing their support. The Democratic Alliance, the Inkatha Freedom Party and COPE had delegations at the pro-Israeli rally, with the ACDP represented by its leader, Reverend Kenneth Mishwe. Outside, the EFF showed solidarity for the people of Palestine. Yulisa Njamela, SABC News.
Now, Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga has tasked a team of experts to examine research that criticises the matric pass requirements here in South Africa. She says the ministerial task team has submitted its report and the department is studying it at the moment. Speaking earlier on Morning Live, the General Secretary of the South African Democratic Teachers Union, Mugwena Maluleke, also spoke out on the issue.
I must indicate that we welcome the engagement with the minister on these particular issues. We were one of the organizations that have indicated that we will not be able to continuously celebrate the quantity in terms of the statistics of pass, but we will only celebrate quality. We have indicated that we need to raise the proficiency levels of all the subjects. So we shouldn't just be raising the percentage from 30% to 40%, but what is important, it is what would constitute that particular 40%. What would be the proficiency level for mathematics, physical science, and many other subjects. And therefore, that is the engagement that we would want to embark upon with everyone, so that indeed we welcome the compulsory teaching of mathematics. This as well will present some challenges in terms of us being able to train a number of teachers to be able to cope with this particular demand.
That's where we wrap it today. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. That's every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. Highlights repeated 2 in the afternoon with a complete rebroadcast the following morning at 5 a.m. We're also live on YouTube at that time, with the entire show available on demand on our YouTube channel all of the time. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We simply love it in the morning.